Three, two, one. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and we are back again with the podcast. So, a couple of days ago, I was sitting with a couple of friends and we were discussing various topics. And while we were discussing, one of them he mentioned his opinion on the Huawei U.S. situation, where basically U.S. Has banned Huawei for calling them that it's a security threat because Huawei is gaining kind of an advantage when it comes to technology. They're way advanced than the U.S. In the 5G spectrum, and I've noticed that while we are having that discussion or we're having that argument, that my friend was most of the time trying to defend certain points that didn't make any sense. Not that because the point that he was making are necessarily accurate. It's just that he felt, I could feel it. He felt that, all right, maybe my points are not valid, so I don't want to look bad, like saying something and then maybe like I'm changing my opinion on it. So I'm just gonna keep pushing, these kind of ideas, and the ideas was basically related to the politics about, the ban from the U.S. To China, and how China is, the big bad boy, whatever. And you can have an opinion, if you have, if you can have an opinion, whatever, without having even evidence. You can just have an opinion that you want to side with a certain, what do you call it, like a certain entity or a certain party, whenever there is a topic. But that it just clicked, in my head that this is actually a very common thing where when we're having a discussion, when we're having a dialogue, and someone has an idea or has an opinion, and when I say an opinion, this is regarding an opinion that of a topic that probably you can prove, or you can prove the opposite of that opinion. Say, for example, if you have an opinion on why NASA exists, for example, and this is actually one of the major things that I want to carry on with this conversation, because for the past couple of days, it's been a very interesting, argument between myself and one of my colleagues. So, say, for example, you have an opinion on NASA, like, you're having the claim that everything that NASA publishes is basically not correct. They're taking advantage of people, and they're very dishonest, and whatever they're doing is just a hoax or blah blah blah. So it was basically a conversation that a friend of mine started. It was a group chat. So his argument was that space is fake, all right? And I can accept that. I have an open mind. I can basically, just take whatever, an individual, have when it comes to IDs and stuff, and I can just take it and look at it and investigate. Maybe because people are different, and if you like, personalities also are different. You might see something that other people don't see. So I take whatever basically I just get when I'm having a conversation, with an open mind. So my friend's argument is that space is fake, okay, and whatever NASA is doing, all of this space stuff that's going on, it's all a hoax. It doesn't exist. It's spooky stuff. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna take this, kind of seriously, because it's a very important thing that people need to be educated, and people need to understand that space exploration or space, industry is one of the major things currently going on in our world, because we're literally started to become an interplanetary, species, as we are, making pretty good advancement when it comes to rockets, when it comes to, space travel, bringing costs down, especially now with the private companies, jumping into the action. So the topic started actually a while ago when the first image of a black hole was released. I know my friend for maybe 6-7 years now, We studied together at the college. Give him a shout out, but I'm not going to give him a shout out because I don't want to spread his ideology. Because for now, as it stands now, it's actually just it's an ideology more than a factual argument. Because literally, as we went back and forth, there wasn't any kind of what would you call it evidence that he was backing up. So the argument started when the first image of a black hole was released, and I was super excited about it because I'm a person who has an admiration for space, and I've been following space news for a while now. So I sent the image, and a friend of mine also sent an image of the first what do you call it, black hole, and basically he just started the argument by saying, well, this is all fake and NASA is fooling you, blah blah blah, and I was like, all right, that's an interesting argument. And most of the time, the people who would come up with such comments are the flat earthers. So shout out to all of the flat earthers. If you stumble to this video, welcome to our round world. So the argument started that he's just saying that space is fake, and NASA is lying, and I don't believe any of this. So I was like, all right, that's an interesting take. So how is that? How space is fake? Just give me some some information. Maybe I'm not seeing something. It was like, well, they faked the moon landing and blah blah blah, and all of that stuff. I was like, they faked moon landing. What's the evidence for that? So it went back and forth with no substance of any evidence for a conversation. Now, before I even continue talking about this, and this is not typically, it's a flat earth, what do you call it, podcast today. It's just that I had this kind of idea of the conversation. When you're having a conversation with someone, it's just like a skill, or let's call it an art per se. It's an art. So there's certain things that when you try to display, you have to back it up. When you try to kind of just initiate an idea, or initiate what do you call it, a thought, you have to be ready to back it up. With several statements that complement this idea or make this idea a bit more valid. So as I started requesting for evidence, my friend basically just kept saying that NASA is just lying to us and they faked the moon landing. And I was like, all right, I can agree, with the statement. NASA lied to us. Yes, there was a time actually within that time, which was the Cold War time, where some of the photos. Now this is an opinion because I can't back it up, but because of the the inspection that I've made in some of the videos that NASA released, and some of the images, possibly some of it could have been what do you call it, faked. And if you ask me for the reason, well, it's simple, because when you go to space, you have to take into account that there is the what do you call it, the radio waves that basically comes from the sun, so that can burn the film that is used to in the cameras to basically take pictures. But the fact that the capability that if we are actually able to go to space or not, it's already there. If you did the calculation, if you basically, this is one of the things that I was telling him. I was like, okay, you can go to the aircraft that took the astronauts to the moon. You could calculate how much fuel that is basically in the in the tank, in the thruster, and you can calculate, or you can ask, if you don't want to calculate it yourself, how much thrust that the rocket produces, and if that fuel is basically enough to take you like outside the Earth atmosphere, and then to the moon. So my friends just wasn't bothered. He was like, you know what, I'm not gonna test all of this. I just want to believe that space is fake, and that's it. Like I don't need to back it up. I don't need to provide any evidence. So it kind of upset me, because it's actually very, very upsetting when an academic guy, who studied in a university, having such a thought from, I don't know where he got it, YouTube videos or whatever. I don't know where he got it, but it's actually worrying because as a man, he's probably going to grow up. He's going to, if he's not growing up yet, he's going to grow up. He's going to go and get married, probably have kids. So now there's going to be a transfer of knowledge, from the father to the son or to the daughter, and for him to have such an opinion again, because again this is not, he did not provide any kind of evidence that backs up everything that he was claiming. It's very worrying because as all of the rest of the world is advancing and discovering new technologies and doing a lot of these space launches and trying to discover technologies as we progress through our venture in space. You have another person here, which is my friend in this case, sitting on the side, just not bothered to be a part of this. And we're talking about someone who's basically had a college education, university education. So if that is the mentality of someone who's actually had a college education, then what is the expectation? I'm not saying that people, I mean, you cannot judge a person from just education itself or college education itself. But I would assume, in this particular situation, that a person who has a college education who would be more kind of keen, to have an open mind for ideas and to be more kind of knowledgeable about, such science and whatever. So I'm like, all right, this argument basically is not going anywhere, so I'm just gonna let it go. So I let it go for some time, and then after a while, there was, I think, there was the Starlink mission, which is basically the SpaceX mission to launch satellites in the lower Earth orbit, and that is a project to enhance or to provide internet for everyone, basically, and that's the concept that Elon Musk came up with. So I shared the news, and I was super excited because it's an exciting thing. Even though I discovered later on that's a dangerous thing because he's planning to launch 12,000 satellites, and there's those going to be in Earth orbit, and that is kind of a worrying thing because when you want to go for space missions now, you have to take into account that you don't want to collide with any one of these satellites. So that's for another topic. But going back to me sharing the news, so I shared the news, and my friend again, just I myself wanted to bring up the argument again of space is fake, and there are people who basically just launched these kind of technology, and I was trying to explain how would that improve the speeds of the internet, because I was telling him, now if we like using the fiber optics, we have these cables that the lights travel through, and there is more resistance with the cables than you just launch a satellite on the Earth orbit, and because it's a vacuum, it's basically faster to communication to have it in space than to have it in fiber optics. And I was just trying to explain the technology and using just common science for him to trying to grab the idea and stuff. But again, a pushback from my dear friend, and because myself and him, we're Muslims, so I brought the argument, to the Quran, I brought the religious side of it. So I was like, all right, you're telling me, like in Islam, it says there's a lot of verses that mentions how the space. It mentions space. It mentions planets. It mentions the moon, the sun. So I'm like, all right, I have a question. If space is basically not real, then what are we looking at? Like, what are those big objects in the sky? Like, what is the sun, and what is the moon? And he gave me the most absurd answer that they're just lights. And he used one verse that describes the sun and the moon, and he says it's lights, and this is the verse. And It was literally one of the most worrying thing, and one of the most upsetting actually, that such an idea would come to a friend, like that I know, and I've been knowing this friend for a while, and I was, very upset because I'm like, I want, all of my friends to be involved in, something great, but unfortunately, there's this friend who was telling me that space is fake, and it's just upsetting, when you look at it. So back again. This is not mostly a topic of space, but this is the main conversation that I was having. So I came to just realize that sometimes, why when you're having a conversation with someone, regardless how much evidence that you could provide to them, regardless how much convincing the evidence and how much like strong the evidence that you will provide to them, they will still resist. They will still push back, push back your arguments, not because you're probably correct, you're probably right. It's just because it's not nice to not win an argument, and that is a very, what do you call it, worrying thing. There is plenty of times where you would be having a conversation with someone, you would be having a view with someone, but just sometimes some people are more knowledgeable than yourself, and I had this like 1,000 times, especially at work, for example, when I have a certain take on some of the matters that we deal with at work, and then I just try to kind of give my perspective, and then just a colleague of mine will come and will correct me, and I'm like, all right, I wasn't look at it from this way, so I believe that is a different way or a different take to look at it. This, even in business, actually, you're having a different view of how things function, and then someone will come to you and will correct you. No, this is how actually it functions. Whatever you were, going with before, it's not the way you do it. So it's not bad sometimes if you're having an argument to just admit that you're probably not correct, because you cannot just take such an argument that is very backable with evidence and full with evidence and stuff, and then you just diminish all of these studies and scientific discoveries for the sake of just you don't want to lose an argument. So yeah, so this is just an idea I've been thinking about for the past couple of days, and something that I really wish that people try to change themselves, and we start with ourselves. I mean, literally, like I've been having also these some political debates with a friend of mine, where I literally for the most part just listen, because I'm not very much aware of the politics. Yes, I understand a lot of things, how does it work and stuff, but when you try to involve historical events with it, I'm not a historical person. Like I don't actually follow history. I can give you an opinion of a commercial kind of take on politics. I can connect them together. But for me to bring up historical events, I'm pretty sure I have friends who are way better on having such delivery. So like moral to the story is that when having a conversation, when having an argument or what do you call it, a debate about something, make sure you just have enough evidence to back it up. You cannot just, disagree with some facts, and I'm saying facts because it's been proven, there's science behind it, whether it's scientific topics, whether it's, other kind of debates. Just make sure that you have enough evidence to back up whatever you're trying to kind of deliver to the other to the other person. So yeah, so this is just a an idea or something that was in my head for the past couple of days, and I wanted just to make the comeback with this podcast. So thank you very much for listening and for watching. I appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.